back in 1974, the Office for Protection from Research Risks had begun to publish regulations for the protection of human subjects. And so we were hearing all that they were talking about in the context of how are we going to translate this into regulatory form and still keep regulatory form. Often is very dry. It's yes and no. It has to be clear, but it has to be flexible. So one of the things I did was persuade. We had already, after the very first session, published the rules on fetal research. We were not very happy with those rules, and I think the public was not happy. As a consequence, I persuaded a man named Richard Reisberg, Dick Reisberg, who was in the Office of General Counsel, and he had been assigned to help us draft regulations. I persuaded him to come to all the commission meetings after the first year. He had no background in ethics, but he was a brilliant man. He listened carefully to the workings of the commission, and he then drafted all the regulations that followed the work of the commission. And those regulations are now the oldest standing regulations in the federal government. They were both flexible. They did not settle questions for which we had no answers, but they created a framework in which IRBs could work and develop and create a literature so that today I think the institutional review boards in institutions all over the country find that they can still work within that framework. There's enough flexibility so that they can they can approve most of the research that is proposed, often with adjustments for further protection for the subjects, but it has not decreased the amount of research involving humans in any way. And I think it was something near genius. Almost every year somebody proposes scrapping the regulations, and then when the new draft comes out, it usually fails because it's not as good as what we already have. And that largely was the work of Dick Reisberg. And just a little aside, it was very difficult. The General Counsel's office was overworked and understaffed. Maybe it still is, but it certainly was in those days. Consequently, if I made an appointment for Reisberg, with Reisberg, I would call his secretary. I would be scheduled for a month or 6 weeks ahead. By then, the issues would have passed. But he came from Springfield, Massachusetts, and I found out he had played hockey as a high school student, and I think his first year or second year college. He loved hockey, and so I bought him a season ticket to the Caps hockey team, and I bought two season tickets, one for Reisberg and one for me. And that's how we got most of our business done, because hockey has 2 periods, which means that you have 40 minutes in between the game that's being played to ask questions. And I would have my notebook full of questions, and people said, "How do you get attention from the General Counsel's office? We can never get an opinion out of them. It takes months to get around to our issues." And I said, "Well, you just have to be fortunate." And so I never revealed that till the regulations were published. But and so my wife quickly understood, planned meals, dinners, entertainment, everything around hockey games, And the hockey games were, I did lots of homework before every hockey game, not about hockey. I came from Minnesota and I loved hockey myself. So we did root for the Caps, who were terrible in those days. But what it really enabled me to do was to get the regulations written. And that's how we did it. I can't imagine how we could have done all that we did without those hockey games. Mm-hmm. So that's just a kind of an aside. Sometimes you have to use a little imagination to find a way to get your work done.